club member, and he's an imager and a telescope maker. He's been making scopes since he was 12 years old and has made, I think it's 8, is it 8 total? 8 total, ranging in size from 4 to 24 inches. And recently he's been focusing a lot of attention on travel scopes. And for about the past 20 years, Greg has been observing total solar eclipses. He's imaged quite a few and traveled all over the world to see them. So tonight he agreed to come share a little bit of his knowledge with us. I guess there's one other thing I wanted to mention, which is that Greg is also an avid binocular observer, and he's written a book about it to help people get introduced to that activity. Please welcome Greg Babcock.
Thanks for having me. By the way, that 3.5-inch Questar is a classic. So I was very impressed to hear about that you still had one, and I know one other person who has one. I wanted to start out by asking a couple of questions. And are all of you planning to try to see the eclipse? I'm guessing y'all are. By a show of hands. Yeah. Have you made your plans for it? Have you secured your site? Equipment? You still? How many people bought equipment just for the eclipse? Okay. Well, I confess I did, but you don't necessarily need to. You can use your existing equipment, and the eclipse is not really a difficult object to image. And you'll see just by my talk that I'm not a sophisticated imager. I like very simple equipment, and in a lot of ways, I think what I'm going to be talking about is geared toward the beginner. Is this going to be everybody's first eclipse, or many people's first eclipse? Yeah, no. So you guys got some eclipse experience?
Yeah. Here.
First total eclipse. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about a little bit about what causes the eclipse. Oh yes, Margaret. I'm good enough? Okay. Can you hear me better? Okay. Stick it right up here. Okay. I'm going to talk about my eclipse background, the eclipse images, equipment I use, equipment you can use, the planning process, and what you do on eclipse day. Now, it looks like most of you are pretty experienced at it, so this might be a little bit redundant. This might be really redundant. But, one of my talks, I got asked this very question. So, obviously, we know that when the moon's orbit passes directly between the sun and the Earth, it causes an eclipse, causing an umbra, which is where totality occurs, and a penumbra, which is where partial occurs. The big prize is considered to be the corona. It's the only time we on Earth can see the corona. It's by pure coincidence. I always thought it was some gravitational thing, but it's pure coincidence that the sun and the moon are virtually the same size, in apparent size. But the sun is approximately 4 times farther away, even though it is 4 times larger. So it creates the effect that the sun and the moon are identical. And that's, I consider that one of those celestial gifts. And so it allows us to see the entire corona. Now, every so often, we were just talking about it in the last presentation, that the moon is further away, and the moon is smaller from time to time. Orbits are not perfect. They're elliptical. They're not on a flat plane. So this is an annular eclipse that I shot at Susanville, and I used a H-alpha filter and a white light filter, so I superimposed the one over the other, and it came out quite nice, I thought. This is my eclipse background. I'm 4 out of 5. The first one, 1979, I got clouded out. I went to Walla Walla. And so then it took me a while to recover emotionally. And 1998 that I went back, went on a Caribbean cruise to see the 98 eclipse. Right after that, I wanted to go right back and do it again. So in 1999, I went to Turkey. And then I decided to call it quits, but some friends talked me into going because we're not going to get a chance to go to Africa again. So 2001, I went to Africa. So you can see there's a block there. Then it was some time before I went out again, and that was to Asia, where there was an eclipse of 6 minutes and 50 seconds. The nice thing, or the fun, a fun thing about going on these eclipse trips is you get a tour. You basically, that becomes the primary part of the trip, because the eclipse is, you spend a day getting ready, and then you spend 2 minutes watching it, or 7 minutes watching it, and then it's done, and then you go back to touring. So you get to see a lot of neat things, and that's kind of a neat side part about observing an eclipse overseas. Okay, 2 of the eclipses I've been on, I viewed them from a cruise ship, and I think that for most of us that seems like a very counterintuitive way to try to photograph or image objects in the sky. But the Earth is covered by a lot of water, and that's where a lot of the eclipses occur, and that's the best place at times to see these eclipses. Of course, the disadvantage is, and it's kind of a mad panic, I can tell you, from doing 2 of these, to get out there and get a good space on the deck. They'll tell you, the cruise director will tell you, plenty of room, don't worry about it, just take your time. But you can see, this is right after the eclipse. The other part I found out was the smoke. The smoke from the stack is a problem. Now, here's another potential problem. Yes, an unstable platform, or I suppose that the picture on the left would be something you certainly don't want to happen. You'd probably try to snap off a few shots and get into the lifeboat, but okay. Well, in this particular case, the water, even though you can see that the water looks pretty calm, but those are 6 foot, I would say 6 to 7, 8 foot swells. If you had a small powerboat down there, you'd probably have some problems with that, but it was relatively calm. This is in Asia, and the advantages of a cruise ship is, and it happened in the 98 eclipse, we cruised right to clear skies, where the guys who chose to stay on land were sweating it out, and actually it didn't clear up until at the very last moment. We had clear skies all the way. You can see some clouds on the horizon, but that's definitely a big advantage. And it says something else too, is that you don't need anything fancy. You don't need tracking equipment to shoot an eclipse. You can't track while you're actually moving on a boat. So a lot of people are just literally just taking snapshots. Kind of making a side point here. My point is that this is a very rare opportunity. It may be the only opportunity for some of us to see an eclipse. You don't have to have a cruise ship. You don't have to fly anywhere. And a lot of when you come back and you tell the story of traveling overseas to go see an eclipse, what you leave out is the long lines, the long flights. It's a very rough trip in some cases. And when you get there, the cruise people or the tour directors are pushing you into the parties and everything else, the welcoming parties and all that. You just want to go to bed and until the eclipse occurs. But those can be rough trips. So this is a very good opportunity. Okay, I'm going to show you pictures I've taken of the eclipse. I've just got a handful. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start from the fastest exposure to the longest exposure, because no matter what exposure you use, you're going to get something. This is something Fred always said in talks that he's given. This is the diamond ring, and this was taken from Africa. Now, I got to qualify the picture a little bit there. They had field burning in Africa, and they didn't stop it. Like in Turkey, they halted all burning so that we would have nice clear skies. In Africa, they did not. So we have kind of a softer image, which is unfortunate. But this particular image, the sun is just about to emerge from behind the moon, so causing this diamond ring effect. It's actually shining between the mountains of the moon. I got a close-up of that effect. This is a close-up. I had some very good equipment on this Turkey eclipse. Well, by the way, the Turkey eclipse has been put in Fred Espinek's 2 latest totality books, and I just kind of skimmed over it. I failed to mention that when I was showing the slide. That was a very successful eclipse, very clear skies, 5,000 feet of elevation, almost no ripple in the sky at all. So it came out really good. So you can see the shapes of the mountains here of the moon. And we get a thing also called Bailey's beads. And that's the beads you see as the sun is either emerging from behind the moon or going behind the moon. Here's a good example of Bailey's beads. Again, this is the African eclipse. And a sequential shot where it starts out on beads as it's going behind the moon, and then as it reemerges, it catches the mountain just right, and it looks like the diamond ring And this is another one. By the way, those rays of light, each one of those represents a mountain peak. Now, when this happened, okay, this is the Asian eclipse. The sun is coming from behind the moon, and I really was annoyed by those rays of light. I've since turned it into kind of a logo. And I thought it was kind of neat because each one of those lights kind of represents a mountain peak, or each dark lane is the mountain peak, and of course the light is the gaps. This is the Turkey eclipse. And you can see the same thing. You can see the diamond rings I'm sorry, not the diamond rings, but the Bailey beads. Sometimes you don't get diamond rings, sometimes you get the beads. Okay, prominences. As you increase your exposure a little bit, you adjust it a little bit high to get the prominences. And happens to my computer too. Okay, prominences. Now that we have the Coronados, the Luntz, and other telescopes, we don't need to see the eclipse to see the prominences. But I still think they look way better on an eclipse. They're bright red. You can really see the color. It's really fascinating. I use the prominences as an indicator that the eclipse is about to end. And so it kind of tells me to maybe adjust the exposure, to adjust to see the beads or diamond ring or whatever's going to happen. The prominences, I don't think, this was the only good prominence on the Asian trip. And I don't think, just what I was listening to earlier, and I'm not seeing a lot of solar activity. I've been watching for it, and I'm not seeing a lot. So I'm not expecting to see a lot of prominence activity on this coming eclipse. And that will actually, and I'll talk about when you decide how to shoot the eclipse or what your format's going to be, that may influence your decision making. Okay, that's African eclipse, and that was a really active. We were in Solar Max at this time, and we were in Solar Max for Turkey. So we got this is the Turkey eclipse, and this is the one that Fred really likes, and this is the ones he likes to put in his book. You can see a little bit of bead activity, and this was a heck of a prominence to show, and I haven't been able to get one that good since. That's it's too bad. But here I took the two hemispheres, if you will, and I put them together to show all the prominences that were going on. They were just going on all over the place. As you increase the exposure, now you start to get signs of the corona. So you can see that haze, which is the corona, and it's kind of a compromise. Now the prominences start to fade. This is one of my favorite shots. This is, an enhanced, longer exposure to get mid-corona and some of the outside, outer corona. At the time, this was what I had sought to do. I had chosen to have high magnification and detailed shots because I knew that there would be a lot of prominences, and I kind of wanted to get that kind of thing, while other people like to get the corona and wide field shots so that you can get as much corona as they possibly can. So I was kind of aiming for the activity at the limit of the sun. There we go. Just like my computer. Okay. Okay, this is the Asian eclipse, and this is a composite of many pictures to get this. And I thought the corona came out pretty nice. And this was my first, and I'll talk about the camera I used on this. This is my first effort with digital. Okay, this is the Caribbean eclipse. Now this is purposely a wide angle shot, not a lot of detail in the corona, but I was trying to get Jupiter. So and this is also on a boat, so it was a good idea to go low power because the boat rocks, and you're having a hard time. You want to hold the image in the center of the field as best you can. So I have Jupiter off. It was about 2 degrees, and the field of view that I was shooting was about 4 degrees. So as you go longer exposure, you get more and more corona. A couple of shots I grabbed off of the internet because I liked them. This is a good example of what you can do. This is a fisheye lens on the left, and then he had some clouds. I should give the author credit. He actually has some pictures in Fred's book as well. But you can see that when he had clouds, he decided to turn it into an artistic shot. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that. This is the annular eclipse. This is looking at the ground. So the trees acted as pinhole cameras, creating, as you can see the crescent moon on the sidewalk there. And just to show that that's really what it is, this was during totality. So you can actually see circles. That's the sun being projected onto the ground. So it's a for real thing, not just a kind of a coincidence. Okay, have you, all right, I was going to leave the comedy out. Have you heard of the word plethora?
Yes.
Okay, yes you have. Have you seen Three Amigos?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so if you have never heard of the word plethora, you could look up Three Amigos on YouTube, and the word plethora is, well, actually it's not explained very well at all. They just get into a fight as to whether he knows what the word plethora means. Plethora, there is a plethora of images, advice, and equipment on the internet. And I give the cheese award to a couple of guys. You know, Eclipse of You and Are You Totally Ready? Orion just can't help themselves. Realistically, if you already have a telescope, you have the means to shoot the eclipse. You need to add a white light filter for the partial portion of the eclipse. You need a manual camera so that you can set your exposure so that your camera's not thinking it has to average the entire view. So you set it for the eclipse. Telescope or telephoto lens, certainly. Tracking equipment is optional. I like to have tracking equipment just because that's one less thing I have to worry about. And a solar viewfinder, which is actually, I think, one of the most underrated pieces of equipment out there. I only know of two really nice ones. One's from Teleview, and one's from Coronado. By the way, does anybody here have a solar viewfinder that they've added to their scopes? No? Okay, yes, a few people, yeah. DLSRs, you can either, through a camera adapter, attach your DLSR directly to your telescope, or you can purchase a $12,000 telephoto lens and attach that to your telescope, or to your camera. One thing I've noticed that has come out, and that is the solar filter that screws onto the end of your lens. You can buy them in different sizes. Okay, before I say what I have to say, does anybody have one? You do, okay. Well, you plan to remove it for the eclipse, for when it hits totality. So you will, I would advise, and you have one and I don't, so you probably, I would advise that you practice a little bit. I have a tendency, if I'm in a hurry, to jam the threads. So, yes.
Did you make this magnetic thing where light screws into your filter, and the other into your lens, and this magnet, and you just pull off?
Perfect. There you go. Yeah.
What was the comment?
So the comment is that you put a magnet on it, so in a sense you can snap it on, snap it off. All right. I'll say something about safety. When I was first learning about solar eclipses, the stress on safety was so extensive, and I get that I wasn't even sure you were supposed to remove your filters for totality. But you definitely remove your filters for totality. That's the only way you're going to see the corona. So, it's just something to keep in mind that when you get advice on the internet, and I was looking for advice on the internet, most of these, and the solar view telescopes, or the eclipse view telescopes, all have filters on them. I see. And so yes, definitely you remove your filter for totality. Okay. Oh, this is what I use. I use a planetary camera. And this is what I mean by I'm not a sophisticated imager. This is this was the first planetary camera that I bought. It was $149. It came with a camera adapter already. It accomplished something that I wanted to accomplish, and that was that I wanted a large viewfinder, and my computer screen becomes my viewfinder. It helps me to focus better. So I think if I can focus my image better, I can make up for perhaps a lack of resolution. It doesn't have the resolution, sophistication of the DLSR. But if I feel like if I can focus it, I can do some things in Photoshop. But there's interpolation programs that help a lot. And I'll show you a picture I took with one to kind of make my point. So very simple. easy to use, real-time imaging, multiple images per second. So it's been I'm stuck on it. Not sure that's, I'm just not sure that's the best way to do it, but for me it works very well. This was the first time I used a planetary camera. This was an eclipse, or I'm sorry, a Venus transit trip to Greece. And I saw a prominence going on, and I said, well, I got to try imaging that, and I thought it came out pretty good for a camera that has, I think it was only about a 640 by 480 camera. So after that, I said, okay, I think I can work with this, and so I purchased a more expensive one, which is Imaging Source makes, a 1280 by 960 camera, and took it with me to Asia. And what I'm just showing you here is, and I'm showing you equipment that I'm probably going to be used. I recently purchased the Takahashi 60 millimeter telescope, and for the purposes of this eclipse and future eclipse, because the telescope itself only weighs about 2 pounds, and weight is everything. When you're traveling, keep the equipment simple as you can. It was incredible. Some of the equipment that I saw on the boat, I saw weights from barbells to hold the tripod steady, to weight them down. I saw multiple telescopes on tripods. It was just, I would have stressed out trying to take all that equipment and check it on through. So I like to keep the stuff very, very simple. And also, you might notice this is a Tigo mount from Takahashi. And what I did with that mount was I removed, it doesn't have that typical sliding counterweight. I took that off because I have a tendency to run into it. So this is just one of those precautionary things. If I can't change the way I am, I change the equipment to work with me. You also notice that I have a light shield for the computer screen. Very, very important. Okay, now I'll talk about what is it you want to do. Do you want to get a wide angle shot or a close-up shot, detail shot? And you're just going to say, well, why can't I do both? Well, in 2 minutes, you don't have a lot of time. By the way, this is the only eclipse in our lifetime over Oregon, so I would recommend you pick your plan and stick with the plan. Just go with it. Or if you have multiple people shooting with you, then that's a good way to do a variety of imaging. Okay, so here's a tip. And I think it's a waste of time at this point because I don't think we're going to get a lot of prominences. You could take your PST out and then take a look at the sun as a couple hours or so before the eclipse starts. And if you see a lot of prominences, you can say, okay, I'm going to put a Barlow lens on that. I don't recommend deciding that in the middle of totality. So it's sort of a decision you can make on site. And being that if you have a planetary camera, that's a very easy fix. That's a very easy change. As a matter of fact, okay, on the annular eclipse, I will say this. Okay, the annular eclipse, I did go from Barlow lens to no Barlow lens a lot, because part of that event is the partial portion, and the partial portion takes a long time to occur. So when it was total, I made sure I had the right configuration. The reason why I put a Barlow lens on some of the time is because I wanted to get close-ups of the lunar surface, of the backdrop against the sun, and you could do those kind of things. But once but I recommend settle in on a plan. And I'll show you some of the things that I did in the past. In the past, this is the Turkey eclipse. I took 2 slides and then laid them over each other to get the full image of the sun. This picture of the sun is about 6 images, 3 halves apiece at different exposures, and then the exposures were averaged with Photoshop. This is the Asian eclipse, and the thing about it is I'm actually lucky to have gotten this much. The boat is rocking, and the image is quite large against the frame. I shot 3,800 frames, hoping that I could get enough pictures to just kind of piece it together. And I did manage to get a picture that I thought was very satisfactory. I had actually insanely had considered putting a Barlow on it, and then I was going to shoot like 10 pictures per exposure or something, see if I could put them together like a puzzle. I really recommend against that, having done that. You know, I think you need to enjoy the eclipse. This is a kind of a close-up, if you will. I had a 1280 camera and a 960 by 960. This is the what a typical shot looked like in the frame. So, and what I'm doing is I'm taking my slow motion controls and I'm going around the outside edge of the sun, trying to keep the sun at least in somewhat in view. At the same time, the boat is rocking. And I will tell you this, when it first went to totality, and I didn't know that this actually happened, I just thought it was me kicking my telescope, I lost the image entirely. And I tried, and I thought, well, I guess it's done. And I said, well, wait a minute, I got 7 minutes. Okay, let me see if I can get it back in. So I took, and I had to put an eyepiece back on, get the sun back in, and then take the camera and put it back on. And I had plenty of, I did have plenty of time to do that. But what had happened, I think the boat had lurched. And one of my friends that was with me at the time had confirmed that the boat had lurched. So, so in a lot of ways, I feel lucky when the image scale is what it is, and the conditions were what they were, and maybe in my inexperience, quite honestly, this is my first time with a planetary camera, filling up the frame. Where this is not 4 degrees. This is more like 0.6 of a degree. 0.6 of a degree, I would say, to work with. So you had to be right on, and your viewfinder had to be working and all. So I feel fortunate. And here's something that I wasn't necessarily trying to do, but I tried to do after I saw it. This is called Earthshine. You see Earthshine from time to time as you have a crescent moon, and the moon is fairly low to the horizon. You can see Earthshine in some of the pictures that people take, and they intentionally do so, and they superimpose them on their eclipse pictures. So you'll see them on the internet. Even though I had 3,800 pictures, I didn't have enough pictures to piece together a complete picture of Earthshine. So this is the best I could do. So, too bad. This is what I plan to do. The new camera, the new telescope, et cetera, et cetera. What's in yellow is what I was doing in Asia. What is in red is what I'm going to try to do this time. I'm not going to try to get fancy. I just want to shoot several exposures and layer those exposures over each other and get the eclipse that way. I still have a fairly nice image, nice large image of the sun. So it is, if there is detail to be gotten, I think I can get it there. I may shrink it, because like I said, I'm not expecting to see a lot of activity on the edge of the sun. I'm just not expecting to see a lot of prominences this time. But right now, what you see circled in red is the scale that I'm looking at. Now, Fred Espenek has some nice stuff. I would consider him to be the best, his website to be the best resource. It's a little bit difficult to navigate, but this is one of the images on Fred's site. This shows, this was originated with film. By the way, anybody going to use film? Everybody off film? You're going to use film? Okay, I do know some people who will still be on film. Fred has, in black, that's for film. In blue, that's for digital. If you have an 800 millimeter telephoto or 800 millimeter focal length telescope and you're using a DSLR, that looks like a nice combination. Here's another thing that Fred puts. I bet you're all wondering what your exposure should be. He puts this on his website. I think it's a little over-engineered, but it takes a while to study and learn. So this is what I do. I went out and tested my own telescope to see just what's a good exposure with the filter. So with a white light filter, what do I like best? And let's just say, okay, look, my results are different than this, but I just picked a number. That's 1/500th of a second. Okay, so once you know that 1/500th of a second is what's good with your filter, you can then determine what your other exposure should be because they're all proportional. I consider the Bailey beads and the diamond ring to be your most important exposure because once you're transitioning, that might not be the right word, but once the totality is about to occur, that's when those things are happening. And that's when you want to get your exposure. You're taking your filter off, and you want to get your exposure to image those things. So you want to knock your exposure or speed up your exposure so that you can image those nicely. What I recommend is doing what I did. I went out and I just tested it, and I came up with 1/2500th of a second is a good exposure for my white light filter. Unfortunately, I can't go 8 times slower with my particular software, but I'm not going to worry about that. I mean, if I can go to 1/10,000th of a second, that's okay. My range is 1/10,000th of a second with my software to 30 seconds. You will definitely, okay, I need to correct what you're looking at there on the screen there. You see everything's an inner corona? Well, that's not true. The first 2 are inner coronas, second 2 are mid coronas, the last 2 are outer coronas. And the RS means radius of the sun. So when you see at the end, let's just say 4 radiuses, 4 sun radiuses, that's 4 times 0.25 of a degree. So that's what, 1 degree. So that's a 1 degree corona going out the side of the sun, which is roughly 2 solar diameters. Okay, once you've got your equipment figured out, set up, I would say you should go out immediately as soon as you can, try it out. And one of the things that I have done as an exercise, me and my friends, we go outside and we try our equipment out. If we have to run back in and get something from the house or whatever we left inside, that has to go into the bag that's going to go on the trip to go see the eclipse, so that you don't leave anything behind. So I would encourage you to get real comfortable with your software. Now, are you familiar with iCap? Anybody familiar with the software iCap? Okay, Steve. I don't think it's that intuitive. So I would practice whatever software you have, practice with it all the time. It's not a good time to relearn the software. Don't take it for granted that everything's going to go perfectly smooth. And I have rehearsed a few times, and one of the things I found out is that Takahashi, in their infinite wisdom, they love to make knobs very universal. And when I'm shooting or imaging, I'm not looking at the telescope. I'm looking through the shield through the computer shield, and I'm reaching out and reaching for a knob, and that feels like the declination knob. Well, it was the focuser, so I kept defocusing the telescope. So a good idea might be to put tape or something on there. You don't want to do that. Once again, you don't want to do that when you're in the middle of trying to get the eclipse. You don't want to refocus. I like to take a picture of the moon as part of the practice. First of all, it's not that hot. I mean, it's not hot outside. It's a lot more comfortable environment. But secondly, the moon has a lot of detail. And this tells me if I'm satisfied with the detail that my camera is producing. This is actually a shot I shot, a few weeks ago with the very setup I plan to use. I was very happy with the setup. I would say if there's any prominences or so, I think they'll show up nicely. So that was the purpose of shooting the moon. And of course the moon is a bright object too, so it's going to be very similar. It's going to be the same kind of exposures, that kind of thing. So it's actually it's the same size. So you'll see if it fills up the frame the way you want it to. So it's a very good way to do it. I get asked this question a lot too, and people talk to me about it and say, well, don't you want to watch it? You know, you get your head stuck in the light shield or in the camera or the computer shield there, wanting to image it. Isn't it more fun to watch it, to see it and all that? And that is one of those philosophical questions, and we'll just get past that real quick here. Some people have tried to answer that with their equipment. This was on the Asian trip, and this might have been one of those telescopes I was talking about, this behemoth setup. That was dragged onto the boat, never mind dragged onto the airplane. What he has here is a flip-up mirror so that he can see the eclipse while he has his head stuck down there trying to image. Now, I have to admit, what I've done is I know when I'm shooting the eclipse that I ought to take a look. And I admit, I poke my head out and look, and I go, yeah, okay, I got it there, I saw it. You know, so then I go back to imaging because I really, you know, images will last a lifetime, and you know, your view of the eclipse, it kind of fades. So you know, naturally, I do like to image the eclipse, and I think that's why a lot of people they want that lifetime memory of what they did. I understand that the AstroSig here has been researching some automatic software that you turn the camera on and then it's you let it go. I'm not quite comfortable doing that yet. I haven't gotten that far along, I think, in my imaging career to do that. But that might be something, if that's how you want to do it, I would inquire with the imaging SIG. Okay. Y'all know, okay, and I asked this earlier, do you all have a place you're going to go? You've all figured it out?
OSP.
OSP. Okay. Certainly within the, yeah, I have several places. I've actually, have you heard of Unity Reservoir?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I actually had a place picked out, and then a few weeks later, a fire broke out, and about a half a mile away, and I just sort of suddenly, it just kind of took the wind out of my, I just took the wind out of my sails. And I remember also that the state parks were not taking any reservations until, I think, January 1 at 12:01, or in the morning, or something like that. And then I just assumed, I have several places. My fallback position is going to be Baker. My wife's family is there. Baker is kind of north of the center line quite a ways. I've looked at a place called Durkee. And I can tell you this because I don't think I'm going to go there. The guy had never heard of it. It's called the High Desert RV Park. And I did go there to go check it out. Most of the RVs are used to store stuff that people don't want to get rid of, but should. So it's not the most inviting. He had never heard of it. So, but they're very accommodating. I went out there in person, and you know, he's pointing to the different areas I could set up. I could. And he said you can have whatever space you want, and well, certainly nice enough people. So that's, you know, a possibility. I still might do it. I don't know. Baker's not starting to look a lot better after I was there. Okay, have you heard of Lime, Oregon? Yeah, have you ever been there? Yeah. Okay. Well, then I'm not spoiling it. Yeah. Well, it's obviously a place where there were some disgruntled tenants. So no, I don't think Lime is on the list. Lime is literally yards from center line. Just a few, I mean, I would say a couple thousand yards from the center line, a little south of it. I don't think I'm going there. You know, if there are no people there, there's probably rattlesnakes there. This is definitely rattlesnake country. Other considerations? Yes. Well, fires is obviously a big deal. I'm aware of what a fire will do to an eclipse because of the African trip. And those were not serious fires. They were pretty controlled fires. It was just put a haze in the sky. But if you do have a fire problem, that may alter what I do. I don't know. I have a place reserved at the coast, but I'm afraid if it's hot in the valley, then you're going to have fog in the morning for who knows how long. You know, and this is what I mean. I think Baker's starting to look better. It's east, and most of the fires, well, the fires in this particular case, most of the fires were west. Almost all the fires were west of Baker. Well, that may not mean anything at all, but I'm just hoping the wind will blow, you know, the right direction. Obviously, you don't want to get caught in traffic. And I think it's a very real possibility. When I'm hearing the numbers that are going to be in Oregon, and I know why, you know, Oregon has some of the best weather for that time of year, the most reliable weather, I should say. It's summer everywhere, but you know, in the Midwest, we could have it could be tornado season, for example. And Oregon seems to be spot on, very good weather. But it also has a history of fires at that time. So anyway, I would say, you know, arrive the night before or sooner for wherever it is you're going to go. I emailed Fred Espenek, and his email back to me was, I'm planning to have 14 to 15 cameras and up to 4 telescopes, He says, I may go to Idaho, West Idaho, or I might drive to eastern Nebraska. Well, that would, but as the crow flies, that's 1,000 miles. And he says, I'm still working out the details. So even the best out there is, I think the thing is that being that it's in the, it's in the U.S. and we have all these, very modern infrastructure and all, we have lots of possibilities, lots of choices. And I think maybe just too many where we can't figure out what we're going to do. A guy like Fred, because he this is the first one in the U.S. I think since, well, I'm not sure when it was. I just remember 38 years ago was the last one in Oregon.
79, yeah.
70, yeah. Yes, 79. Okay, let's go to Eclipse Day. On Eclipse Day, the first thing, of course, you want to do is you want to aim your telescope. And this is the advice of the Orion guy, is to get the silhouette of the telescope nice and crisp on the ground, and then you'll have it you'll have the sun in your scope. Again, I like the viewfinders. If you decide to use an equatorial mount, I found an app that's a compass, and I found a protractor app. So you can set, your protractor can be used to set your latitude, and your compass, of course, can be used to aim your telescope north. We don't have the North Star as a reference. Now, just so you know, there's an offset. You don't just aim north. And the offset is, and I didn't write it down on the PowerPoint. It might have been helpful if I did for you guys, but this is pretty easy to remember. It's 16 degrees on the eastern Oregon border to about 17.5 degrees at the coast. Okay, give or take. So it's about a 1.5 degree variance. I would say if you hit 16, anywhere between 16, no matter where you are in Oregon, if you get close, it's a 2-minute eclipse, you're going to be fine. You'll be able to track real well. I've had real good success tracking. Now, the other part is, don't forget the batteries. Don't forget to change fresh batteries and whatever requires batteries before you go out. You might even want to take some extra batteries just in case those have been sitting around too long. First contact. This is, well, okay. First contact. This is you'll feel yourself start to change a little bit. You've been planning this for a long time, and yeah, your heart does race, and even mine does at my very youthful age. And you realize, just keep calm. You realize that you've been planning this for a long time. You're going to get one shot at this. You can't go back. You can't rewind it. You can't, when it's all done, say, well, maybe I'll try it again tomorrow morning. This is it. Okay, and the other thing is, this is the best time to focus your telescope. I like to focus the telescope, not on sunspots, because you don't always know if you can get them, and they don't make really good focusing objects anyway. I like to focus the telescope on the edge of the moon. And I like to take the software and blow it up as large as is reasonable, and focus, even though it's pixelated, I focus it at that time. And then I shrink the image back down to make sure that the sun is framed in the frame the way I want it to be. Okay, now just before totality, which would be second contact, that's the time to remove your filters and to get your exposure down to where you're going to be imaging the beads or the diamond ring, and you won't know which it is until it happens. Okay, so there's that. And then, of course, once you have totality, that's when everybody really hoot and hollers. That's the time to then bracket your exposures. Just shoot as many as you can. We're digital now, so we don't have to worry about the 36 exposure canister running out. Some of us are still going to be on film, granted, but bracket your shots. And then 2 minutes later, sometimes there are people who will call out the time, but I don't know very many people who are willing to do that. They want to watch it too. They don't want to look at their clock. You could put a little alarm that would warn you 10 seconds before the totality is to be over. But that's the time then to get your exposure down quickly. If you see prominences appear, that's when you start moving your exposures to a higher speed, and you get ready to put your filter back on. And then this is one of the worst feelings, is when it's over. And you'll go, man, it was just 2 minutes. I've been planning this for 2 years. You will have that kind of feeling about it, but you'll start thinking about, the next eclipse is just north of Mendoza, where we have that sister group. And I've talked to Leo about it already. He literally has the car loaded and ready to go right now, I can tell you. So, and if you ask anything of them, they'll do it for you. So I've been kind of broaching the subject with Leo. Chuck Detloff and I have actually talked about a possible cruise, because you can see that the eclipse terminates on the east coast of Argentina. So that means it's going to be, more a longer eclipse at sea. And again, you have that advantage of, let me see, what time of year is that going to be? That's going to be July, so isn't that their winter?
Winter.
Yeah, so it's questionable as to, this might not be a good time to be on the land for this eclipse. So, but there's another eclipse in Argentina, I believe, a year after that, is, if my memory serves me right, and I've talked to Leo about that too, and of course yes, in Patagonia, yes, that's right, he brought that up, and he's very anxious to receive us all, I'm sure. Okay, well, your best resource, again, I think, is Fred's site. I hope that you all have a very successful eclipse trip. And I'm looking forward to us all sharing. I mean, this is going to be the most imaged eclipse probably in history. So I'm looking very much forward to sharing with you your results. And I thank you for your time, and are there any questions? Yes, Matt?
Yeah. Is there any difference between exposure times during totality, at like the beginning of totality versus mid-totality?
At the beginning of totality, not really. Okay, but you will notice in your pictures though, you will see a glow. It'll kind of, it'll be glowing for a while on the outer edge, and it will go, kind of disappear and then go to the other side. It depends how long the eclipse is. In the case of the Asian eclipse, since the moon is so large and it covered up so much, it was pretty much there was not this huge variation in brightness. But, and also Fred has always disclaimed everything he tells about what the eclipse is going to look like, because he says they're just all different, you just can't tell. So it's just however it turns out. Yeah, Steve?
Well, you had in the early slides a sequence
Yes.
going from left to right with totality in the center.
Yeah.
Now, you just took a series of exposures and then photoshopped them all together. Is that how that done?
Yeah, I just took that was the Turkey eclipse, African eclipse. The African eclipse I shot. Okay. I just shot a lot of different exposures, but I made sure I shot 125th of a second, that particular case, because that was the best exposure for that equipment to get beads and prominences.
Okay.
So I shot a lot of those as it was moving toward totality. When it got to totality, I bracketed for the corona. After I saw the prominences appear, I then increased the exposure time. Well, okay.
Back to the original.
Yeah, back to the original 125th, and then followed that through to the end. So.
And how large were your brackets? Full stop?
Yeah, full stop. Yes. In that case, you don't have a lot of choices. You go from 125th to a 60th to a 30th to an 8th. So whereas you have literally hundreds of choices, it seems like, with digital. You were going to ask it, Margaret?
You have that, you're talking about a screw-on filter?
Yes.
For your standard lens?
Yeah.
So where did that come in?
Oh, B&H photo. Just about anybody with B&H sells, and yeah, just about any Autorama. Yeah.
That was with the binder?
That was that's the filter that screws onto the end of the camera lens. Yeah, the solar filter. Do you have the other question?
Yes, could you please explain how the solar finder works?
Yeah. Okay, the one with the it's a pinhole camera in a sense. The Teleview, I don't have the Coronado, so I don't really know quite how that works. But what it is it becomes a pinhole camera that projects onto a little tiny screen. So once I got the image of the sun in that screen, and assuming that I have, aligned it properly with the telescope, then I will have the image in the telescope. So yeah, it's slick, totally
It's not
slick.
look through, it projects onto.
Yeah, yes. By the way, I didn't talk about eyepiece projection, where you know it's a very popular way to look at the sun, where you actually no filter look. The sun shines through the telescope, unprotected telescope, and then through a eyepiece onto a card. For eclipse, I don't recommend that, because when it goes total, then of course you're not going to be able to see much of anything on that card, unless you could rotate your eyepiece around so that then you can look through it. But it's not very good for imaging. You might have to refocus, that kind of thing. But I saw that it's kind of a hard sell. I saw it was a hard sell on the internet. But the other thing was that if your eyepieces are expensive and cemented and that kind of thing, it could end up melting the cement in your eyepieces. So I've stayed away from it. It used to be applauded as the safe way to view the sun, and now it's the best way to wreck a telescope, I think. Yes.
Two questions. One, does
Well, that's okay. That happens to me all the time.
yeah, what do you think about center line versus off center line, like over 2 minutes,
Yeah.
or how the eclipse would be different at only maybe a minute near the edge?
Yeah.
The effects are supposed to be different in those areas, and I was wondering what you thought about that.
Yeah, I saw a picture of a video of a person who was right on the edge, and I thought it was one of the neatest images of the eclipse that I've seen. And it's where the eclipse, the moon was covering up the sun just barely on the edge. So you could see these sparkles as the moon was moving across the sun. And I thought that was kind of, and they were with a group called On the Edge. And with me, right now, because I think I'm getting real fearful of traffic infrastructure and all that other stuff. When I can go to my wife's family's house and have a lawn and be unimpeded, and even though I'm not as close to the center line as I'd want to be, I'm really quite happy to just be there. So I'm kind of trying to look at it in that way, in that it is going to look different. It'll be a little bit shorter, but but that group on edge, obviously, they're a group who seeks to go to the edge, or to go to the edge of totality. I think it's a little risky myself, just in case the calculation is a little bit off. But anyway, sure. I'll take one more.
Talking about the geometry a little bit. Oregon Star Party is south of the center.
Yes.
So the diamond ring will probably be in the lower quadrants.
I think so. Yeah, I think so, because that's where yes.
If we were right on the center line.
Probably be in the center, theoretically. I think, yes. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I noticed that Turkey eclipse, we were told we're on the center line, because that's the way Fred always says it. Well, we're here at the center line. But I also noticed that the diamond, that the beads started at let's just say at the top, and they reappeared at the top. So we must have been off the center line by that distance, as far as I could tell. In Africa, it looks like we were right on. Okay, that's probably. I'm going to be around for a little bit if you have any more questions you have to talk about. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.